Hello, thank you for listening to Three Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. The Three Legacies Recovery Recording. I'm Paul, definitely an alcoholic. I'm your host. And today is February 18th, 2025, and this is episode 13. I want to really thank everyone for that's been giving us all the support. We've had some emails. We've had a lot of people tuning in, people asking different questions about different shows. Also have had some different people comment on the YouTube, and also we've had a little bit of attention. We're now on some of the major platforms, the streaming platforms. I know we're on iHeartRadio, the show. All the episodes are available on that. Also on Audible and Spotify. And there's some other major ones. I know we're also on Podomatic is one of the platforms that we're on. So we appreciate all the support from everyone. Also, our email address, if you want to send us any talks, if you have any suggestions for future shows, any of that stuff, is recoveryrecordings615@yahoo.com. And today we got one of our special guests from all the way from New Jersey, Chris S. How you doing, buddy?
Good, Paul. Good. I hope everything's going well with you.
Yeah, man, it's going great here in Tennessee. It's I think one of the last shows or before that it was about 50 or 60 degrees, and now we are waiting for about 3 or 4 inches of snow overnight. So it's weird here.
Yeah, if you're not getting floods, you're getting the polar vortex.
There you go. Yeah,
it's a crazy time of year.
Yeah, man, it's crazy here. It's yeah, man. So I wanted to tell you thank you for all the episodes. We're doing step 8 tonight for the listeners. This is it's been a real treat having Chris on the show. We're calling it an adequate presentation of the steps, a guide for sponsorship, and it's just about for anyone that's, starting to take a new prospect through the 12 steps, and they're using the big book Alcoholics Anonymous. It's just a great tool for anyone that's maybe just needs a little freshening up, and or just someone that's just getting into it. So, what are your thoughts with Chris?
I think the big book should be used as the principal architecture of the spiritual program, and it should be referenced if you're going to be taking somebody through the steps. It certainly should be referenced. We're all different people, and we have different experiences, and we have different ways of expressing ourselves. And so this, taking somebody through the steps, if you want to get good at it, start doing it.
Yeah.
And each of us is going to have our own way of doing it. I just would hope that if you do choose to sponsor somebody and you're really trying to help them achieve something where they're going to be able to maintain sobriety and experience recovery, that your basic reference point is the book Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what I would really want to start off with.
Nice, yeah, that's interesting. That's awesome. I tell you, the interesting. One of the things I was going to bring up was this upcoming weekend. My sponsor, his wife, and my wife are going to be out of town. They got like a women's thing they're doing in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and but we have there's several guys, probably 10 guys, maybe in my home group. My sponsor had sent out a multi-text message over this past week saying that we were going to do a 4th step. We're going to do a group 4th, I guess, and 5th step. And one of the requirements was that you had to have done it in the big book first, because we're actually going to be doing, for the first time, I'm not sure that my sponsor's ever even done this, probably has, but we're going to be doing it out of the 12 and 12, which is a brand new experience. I've never done it out of the 12 and 12.
Sure.
But he had specifically said, that if they, as long as they've been through the big book Alcoholics Anonymous 4th step, they're welcome. I guess It's cool, man. I'm excited about it. Just to
Yeah.
see what the experience is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wise. The 12 essays on the 12 steps that are in the book, the 12 steps and 12 traditions. In the introduction, it says they're to kind of broaden and deepen some of the thoughts on the steps, and they're less textual. In other words, the big book is a textbook. Its primary purpose is to show you how to recover from alcoholism and how to develop a relationship with a power that will solve your problem. And it's specific in its instructions on the steps. The 12 and 12 is a little bit more philosophical, a little bit more some deep concepts about the steps. And it's a little bit more difficult to actually take the steps from the 12 and 12 because it's less specific in its instructions. However, I've gone through the 12 and 12 at a deep level, the way you're talking about, and there's experience to be had. This thing called the spiritual world is very deep, and there are many different kinds of lessons that we can learn, and books that we can use to broaden and deepen our spiritual experience. So, I love the book 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. I think it's wise that someone is exposed to the book Alcoholics Anonymous primarily. But the 12 and 12 just it adds color. It adds color to this thing called spirituality.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Yeah. And I tell you, and even with the traditions out of it, which was decent, but I prefer when I'm reading some of the tradition stuff. I really prefer it out of the language of the heart. Personally, I enjoy those a little bit better. What do you think about that?
Well, the language of the heart is unique in that it reprints Bill Wilson's articles, and as he was developing the steps in the beginning phase of the development of the traditions, he was writing about the traditions, and in the middle part of the development of the traditions, he writes about all the traditions, and then when they're finalized, when they're ready for conference approval, he's writing about them and finalizing the language. So you get to really dig deep into the traditions when you experience them that way. And then the essays in the 12 traditions on the traditions, 12 steps and 12 traditions, that's a whole nother look at the depth and the value of these traditions. So I'm all for it. I think the study of the steps is more interesting to the alcoholic because the traditions have to do with the group, but I think they're really important. They'll teach us how not to muck things up. I can't tell you how many people show up in AA, get a brief introduction and education on all this stuff and want to change it all. I think the longer you're sober and the more experience you have with all this stuff, the less you want to change it.
Nice. Yeah.
That's what I've seen.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's so true though. Yeah, I tell you. Speaking of the language of the heart, give a shout out to you and Monty over at Take 12 Radio. Y'all have been doing some amazing stuff over there, man. Y'all broke that thing down. And just to all the listeners, go over and check out Take 12 Radio. Chris, which is who we're interviewing right now, and also Monty over there, they have literally done an episode on each one of the articles, and it has been amazing. You can go over, it's Take 12, so you can spell out the word 12 radio, or you can go over to the Facebook site, and there's a YouTube page for Take 12 Radio, and y'all been doing good stuff over there. How's that experience been with you?
Oh man, I've loved every minute of it. First of all, I love Monty. He's I'm really good friends with Monty.
Amazing guy, yeah.
He's mission driven like crazy. There's no there's no agenda with him. He's really just mission driven, and I love him.
Yeah.
And for 2.5 years, we've been doing this podcast.
Wow.
We will be on episode 99 on Thursday.
Wow.
And we'll be finishing it off next week with episode 100. Can you imagine?
That's crazy. Is it right at 100? Is that what it is? Right?
Yeah,
at 100?
yeah.
Wow.
It's falling out right at 100,
That's
which
crazy.
it's one of those God hugs.
Yeah, yeah,
Letting us know that we're on the right path.
yeah. What do you have? You and Monty doing anything else? Do you have anything planned? What's up the sleeve? Anything?
So here's the plan. We're going to take a couple months off and just get a breather,
Yeah.
but we're going to come back and we're going to do a podcast on our great responsibility.
Nice. Wow.
Those are the writings that Bill put together for for the conferences, and they're much more service heavy. They're much more general service esque.
Yeah.
And so I asked Monty to include Judy, who you're going to be doing a podcast with, and her husband Lou, because they're ex-delegates and stuff. They have more legitimacy than I do in the service realm, and have deeper experience with all of it. They've been to all the service roundups and all that stuff, and they've fought the great fight within the structure of our service structure, and they've come off the battlefield and have a lot to share. And so maybe what I'll do is I'll be doing the reading and maybe a little bit of commenting, and I think Judy and Lou are going to do the bulk of it as they should.
Wow, that's cool. I didn't realize they were going to be on that video. That's super exciting because I've been wanting to get into that book. That's one I haven't checked out yet. I own it. I just hadn't started it yet. I've got so many different books going on. That's exciting. Is it going to be the same way? You're going to do is the layout of that book? What is it? Just chapters, or what are they all going to do? How does that look like?
I'm embarrassed to say it's, when it first came out, I went through it, but I don't even remember.
Gotcha.
I think we're probably gonna do talk by talk.
Nice. Yeah.
So he would write out his talks that he would be giving at the international or whatever, and he would write it all out, and we'll just I'll be reading a paragraph or two and letting Judy and Lou and Monty do their thing.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't realize that Judy was a past delegate, though. I think you told me that. I just forgot. That's cool, man. That's awesome. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for those that are listening, Judy is going to be on the show in April at some time. And then we also have a couple other special guests coming up over the next few months. Man, this thing's been cool, man. It's getting somewhere.
Yeah.
I feel it's reaching a lot
And
of
her
people.
husband Lou, service sponsor was Don Pritz.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay. Yeah, wow.
That's a pretty good pedigree right there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's cool. All right, buddy. Well, I guess we can start on step 8. That's where we're at tonight in the series.
Sure. Every single episode we've kind of been rehashing the previous steps. I'm going to very briefly do that. We admit that we're powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable in step 1. We come to some type of a belief that there's a solution, that there's a way out of this type of life, this destructive type of life. And in step 3, we make a decision to engage in the participation in that type of life. And a lot of language in the book leads you to believe that it's almost a religious commitment or something, and I don't really see it that way. I see it as a commitment to spiritual living. That spiritual living is going to bring us into contact with the divine. Each of us is going to have our own experience with that divine. Many of us call that divine God. But in step 3, we really make a decision to do this thing, to come all the way in, sit all the way down, and do our job in this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. In step 4, we inventory our grosser handicaps. We've seen from page 60 to 63, we've seen what our real problem is. Our real problem is the different manifestations of self that we've kind of developed the selfishness, the self-seeking, self-centeredness, and we look really deeply at that. And then just before we get into inventory, it asks us to look at the most common manifestations of self that have defeated us, and they move us right into resentment. Then they move us into fear or anxiety. I like to call it anxiety more than I like to call it fear today, because the word definition just has kind of changed in the last 80 years. It's more akin to what we see as anxiety today. And our behavior, especially our sexual behavior, our behavior with people we pretend to care the most about, that usually get the brunt of our ugly behavior. So we need to inventory all that. We need to look at all that. Now, then we share it. Then we become willing to have these shortcomings, these mistakes, these faults, these defects removed, and we make a demonstration, a prayerful, meditative demonstration that we are serious about this removal, and we ask for them to be removed, and that really moves us into to step 8. Now, I want to say this before we even get started on step 8, and this is what I believe today. Now, I didn't believe this for years, and the amount of self-inflicted pain I caused myself because I didn't understand it or didn't believe it. I wish I had that time back, because this is what I believe today. I believe that I was suffering from an illness. That illness manifested as an obsession and a craving that did not allow me to separate from alcohol. I believe that these character defects, this manifestation of self-centeredness, was something that just developed in me. It just grew in me. It became habitual. To some degree, all of us have it because we're conscious organisms, aware that we're separate from other organisms. Yeah. But what happens with alcoholics is this sense of self becomes unhealthy. It becomes exaggerated, and it becomes dominant. Wow. And so I understand that I'm being driven by these character defects. This book says that I'm powerless, and I'm being driven by 100 forms of fear, self-pity, self-seeking, delusion. I'm being driven by these things, Paul, and that means that I'm not the driver. You understand what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to get at is, I did the best I could, given the circumstances. I don't believe I'm responsible for all the mess that happened when I was alcoholic and in early sobriety prior to a recovery program. Number one, because I was powerless, and number two, because I was driven. If you're powerless and you're driven, how can it be your fault?
Amen. Yeah.
It can't, right?
Yeah.
But here's the magic of step 8. As we move into step 8, the magic is we become accountable as if we were responsible. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's good stuff.
So I have to act as if I'm completely responsible for all this stuff, and I need to make amends for the harms that I've caused. And that's really my introduction into step 8. I'm going to start reading from the book now.
Okay.
Where the heck are we? I'm sorry, I got to find the page.
All right, let's see.
Here we go. All right. So
76, is that where we're at?
Yeah. Okay. Now we need more action. So what do we mean we need more action? So we've just said the 7-step prayer. I pray that you now remove from me every single defective character. Okay, we have then completed step 7. So there's a period after that. We've completed step 7. That means we're not to dilly-dally around with step 7 anymore. We are to move on to step 8, if you follow the text in this book. And it says, now we need more action. Without, we find that faith without works is dead. Now, one of the early influences in Alcoholics Anonymous was the Book of James. There were several. They would use the Bible until there was a big book. They used the Bible. Let's just be real about it, right? Yeah. And they would read from 2 Corinthians. They would read the Sermon on the Mount, and they would read from the Book of James. The Book of James just seemed to be a favorite of theirs, and the Book of James really is kind of like a call to action. It's a different kind of New Testament book, and in it you will find faith without works is dead. So I could translate that into recovery without works is dead. Sobriety without works is dead. This is Works Publishing is the company that first published this book. They understood that we have to participate. We have to take action. This isn't like an intellectual exercise. It's not like a self-help book where we read it, we change our philosophy a little bit, and we move forward. This book has us changing our actions and our behaviors before we change our philosophy in many cases, or our attitudes. Yeah. It has us taking drastic action. And it's saying, let's look at step 8 and 9. We have the list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. Now you may have a list that doesn't have all your harms on it, right? But Bill is assuming that the simple fourth step that you did in resentment, the fourth column is where were you selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, or frightened. Okay, those defects can harm other people. In fears, it asks us to it asks us to look deeply at these fears, and a lot of times our fears can harm other people. If we're afraid to go get a job, it's going to harm our family. Yeah. That's just a simple example, but we can dig material out of our fear inventory by asking, who did this hurt? And then in the sex inventory, it says, whom had we harmed? What should we have done instead? What were our mistakes? Yeah. And again, we mine all that for harm. Have we harmed another person in another institution? And I like to put this on a separate piece of paper. It doesn't really say that we have to do that. It kind of says it's in our 4-step. But Paul, what I like to do is I like to use index cards.
Me too.
And on the index card in the front, I'll put the person or the institution's name, how to get hold of them, right? And I'll write down the harm. And I'm really careful to be exacting with the harm. I don't want to put, I was a jerk. I want to put, I insulted him in front of his family at his sister's wedding. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I want to be, I want to be really clear on the harm. And then what I want to do, or what you'll want to do is you'll want to ask your sponsees to meet with you before they make one amends. Yeah. They need to meet with you, and this is what I do. You can, if you do it another way, you're right. But this is the way I do it. Yeah. I meet with the people, and we go over the cards, and we flip the card over, and we come to a consensus on the approach and the possible amends. What it would look like, how to handle it, and we'll come to a consensus. So I will have gotten an agreement from the person as they're putting their 8-step cards together. I'll be getting an agreement on willingness, or at least praying for willingness from that specific exercise.
Nice.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. He's talking about step 4. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. So amends, repair. What you want to try to avoid is a simple apology. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I shot off my handgun, in front of your family at your house. So how many times, Paul, how many times have you said you were sorry?
Countless. Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. You said you're sorry probably 10 times for the same thing.
Absolutely.
And you know what that means? That means we're pretty sorry people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that an apology isn't part of an amends, but an amends goes deeper. An amends goes to restitution. An amends goes to repair. You know what I mean? And that's much deeper than a simple apology. So it says we attempt to sweep away the debris which is accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, you're to tell the person you're working with when it says something like "we ask until it comes." That means them. We means you. You know what I mean? So you are to pray. If you're afraid of making amends to Aunt Fanny, because she's going to find out some horrible thing that she doesn't know about or whatever. First of all, you need to be very, very clear. It's not going to cause her harm if you make the amends. But if it's if the amends is indicated and you're unwilling to do it, it's very, very important, I believe, to engage in this prayer work.
Amen. Yeah.
Then he says, remember, it was agreed at the beginning that we would go to any length for recovery over alcohol. So Paul, here's something I do every once in a while. I don't do it all the time, but I'll sit down with somebody and it'll be me going through the first 3 steps with them. Okay. I will have them write in my big book. I am willing to go to any lengths over victory from alcohol. I will offer them the dignity of understanding that any lengths are what is in this book. And then I'll have them sign it and date it.
I've heard that before. That's funny.
Okay, so if balking starts, if I know I should be, I told you I'd have the 4-step ready, I'll be able to point back to, are you a man of your word?
Yeah.
Are you a man of your word? You know what I mean? You told me you'd be willing to go to the lengths that are described in this book for recovery over alcoholism. Let's get moving.
Yeah.
And I'll use that as a tool if I see somebody's a little shaky.
That's funny.
But so in the early days, Paul, Alcoholics Anonymous was different. In, say, the first 15 years or so, you a lot of times, at least in the first 10 years, you weren't brought right to a meeting. Okay, you were to meet with a sponsor, and you were to go through a number of these steps before they would consider you serious. And only the serious people were allowed in the meetings in certain places. Okay. So the steps were prior to the meetings in the early days. Now it's kind of different today. You know how things are. I mean, can't shake a stick without hitting a meeting somewhere.
Sure.
And a lot of times if somebody's struggling, the first thought is take them to a meeting. That's not what this book wants you to do. It doesn't want you to take them to a meeting. It wants you to explain to them what alcoholism is and what the recovery from alcoholism is, what it looks like, and to try to gain a convert, someone that you could call a prospect or a protege, to help them move through the steps. So when this book was written, that's what Alcoholics Anonymous looked like. They had bouncers at the doors in many places.
Wow.
You know what I mean? You just couldn't be some riffraff trying to walk in.
Yeah.
You know, today anybody can walk through the door, you know, and show up in a meeting. It's a different experience today.
It's interesting.
So if you weren't willing to make amends, they weren't willing to bring you to the meetings. Now, somebody that hears that is going to say this. I know it. If they told me on my first day that I had to make amends, I never would have gone to AA.
Yeah.
And you're getting the whole context wrong.
Yeah.
They wouldn't walk up to you and say you make amends or you don't get in this room. They take you through this process and explain to you why this is necessary, why all this work is necessary, because that's the participation in the spiritual recovery process. Without that, you're not going to stay sober if you're a real alcoholic.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a heavy drinker or you know, half an alcoholic or something, you know, you might be able to get away without making amends. But if you're in real trouble with alcohol, you best be about the business of making some amends. Otherwise, the guilt and the shame and the remorse will haunt you until you drink again. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your experience with this stuff, Paul.
So, I'm always wondering how deep people get. You know, like for me, you know, it could be some. You know, it could be something as simple as like, you know, just going and trying to correct a relationship, you know, that maybe the harms that I've caused wasn't like direct as far as like, and I've talked to other people that have different experiences with this, but let's just say my experience isn't like that I went and like cussed them in front of somebody or nothing like that. But sometimes it's just the fact that, you know, like I just wasn't there as a family member. You get what I mean? I currently have one that I'm in the process of going to be going to Chattanooga and speaking with a family member that I just really wasn't a part of their life for years. You get what I mean? And
yeah.
And I'm always curious though, because I hear different people say, well, you know, I don't know that I would call that an amends. I just call it, you know, it's just kind of doing the right thing, practicing the principles in all your affairs. So I'm always curious on how deep people get with it. Like, sure, I didn't cause any harms, but at the same time, like, there's been some situations come up and within my family over the last 6 months, honestly, where I realized it was an indirect experience of like some of the actions I did, whether it was, you know, for years, taking all the emotional quality from my grandparents, for example, you know, stealing all that, you know, because I was in and out of jail or whatever, that other parts of my family suffered because of it, you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So deep within us, you know, there's a voice.
Yeah.
There's a spiritual voice. And what it will do is it will point you to the fact that there was behavior or non-behavior on your part that you recognized was insufficient and it probably caused harm.
Yeah.
So now here's the thing. Why this thing is a living process, why this thing is a way of life, is because we'll come to terms with things we need to make amends to in 6 months. And in a year, there's going to be a deeper level of things that we're going to become aware of, that there was a shortcoming in how we live this life. And you know, there were people who were less off because of it.
Yeah.
So I'll give you for instance, you know, I had, I don't know, about 60 people on my first amends list, and it was, you know, it was pillaging and explosions and stealing and robbery, and, you know, I mean, it was like glaring things that needed to be made amends for, and I did those. As the years went by, other things started to come into my consciousness. I'll tell you one of them. This happened about 10 years ago. Uh, my grandmother died when I was 17, right? And it was kind of a sad case. She had lost her son, which was my father. She had lost her husband, and really all she had was the grandkids. And she was just trying to stay close to me. And she would drive over to the house, and I would see her pull in the driveway, and I would run out the back door. I didn't want to hang out with grandma. And I could tell you like 5 or 6 stories that had to do with her. Now, she didn't make my first list. She didn't make my second list. She didn't make my third list. But at around 20 years sober, I really started to think about family, and I really started to think that she just wanted to love her grandson.
Yeah.
She didn't have a lot of other people, and I made it hard for her. I was not interested, and so I had to search. I had to search around and find the mortuary that she was at in Newark, New Jersey. You know what I mean? Like none of the family had gone to see her in 50 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's one of the ones that I had to become willing to do. Now that was at a different level of consciousness than when in my first 6 months to a year. My first 6 months of the year, I was sticking my head up out of the hurricane shelter, assessing all the buildings that were knocked down.
Yeah.
It's more subtle now. It's more subtle and it's more spiritual. But yeah, if that inner voice is telling you something needs to be made right, listen to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the guidance that my sponsor has given me with a lot of it. It's crazy because it's the absolute truth. It's the longer and longer I stay sober, the more stuff like that happens. And so I'm always curious that though, just how deep people get with it. And a lot of stuff too is a lot of that stuff gets revealed too, even when I'm going through the 4-step process. By the time I see how selfish, self-centered, self-seeking I've been, it's like, wow, like clearly, there's some stuff to make right there,
Yeah. Yeah. So I come from a spiritual lineage, Paul, and this may seem, I may seem to come off as like a step fanatic. I come from a spiritual lineage where you do all your amends, all the ones that are appropriate to do, except when to do so would injure them or others.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's going to injure you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're not others. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So you do them. No excuses. No excuses. This is the life that you've made an agreement to live.
Yeah.
And I know that's not the norm. I know that's not the norm out there. I think if you walk into a meeting and you explain like the damage you caused somebody in your family, and you talk about, can anybody give me any guidance on amends? Half the people will tell you you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Half the people didn't do it themselves, and you will find people who will cut you slack on the amends, and that's not doing you any favors.
Yeah. Yeah.
To cut you slack is not to do you any favors. I know that from personal experience.
Yeah, it's my. That's how in the beginning. I was around a lot of that, and then I went and the second or the first sponsor I got into. By the time the second sponsor I had where we actually got to that part of the steps was real big on no. If you owe the money, you pay it back. And there's still some financial amends, some hospital bill stuff that I owe. And there's also, like, the longer I stay sober, obviously the more stuff comes up where it's like what I was talking about with the family member. But, it was the same thing with me in the beginning. There was a lot of people say, oh, no, if that harms you, no, we don't do it. And there was also other situations where, like particular situations with my grandfather or my grandparents, and I'd actually went back and made the amends where, like, but I was directed that if they had found out about this, it was a truck, a truck that I had, used to steal at night, and it blew up on me one night, and I ended up getting it towed back to the parking space it was.
Oh boy!
Yeah, and I didn't share anything about that for years, right? And I ended up, I went and made an amends of that years into recovery. And paid my grandpa the money for the truck. We come up with an agreement and all this, but my relationship with him has completely changed since then. It's crazy, and we didn't have a bad relationship to begin with, but now we talk on a regular basis about all kinds of spiritual stuff, actually. And but it was funny too, because all this time that I had went and made the amends on that, he was like, when I went to him, he was like, I already knew about it, Paul. I was waiting for you to say something. Yeah, but I was directed, I was directed. No, you can't tell him about that. That'll cause harms. And I was like, okay, well, but no, it all panned out. Yeah.
What I want to say about our reluctance, every single one of us is going to have a deep reluctance sometimes to do specific amends. And I want to say that reluctance is the illness that you need to recover from, because it comes from self.
Wow.
All right. So, oh man, if I go do that amends, they're gonna think I'm an idiot, and they're gonna say something to make me feel small and blah blah blah. All that stuff is the self-consciousness defending itself. Self-consciousness is what this whole process treats. So in effect, if you allow your intellect to talk you out of making an amends that's appropriate to make, you're allowing the illness, alcoholism, to win.
Itself, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't want to be about that today.
Yeah.
I don't want alcoholism to win in my case. I want to die with alcoholism. I don't want to die from alcoholism.
Wow. It's good stuff. So what about like how early did you get into the amends process?
All right. So because I was only exposed to the big book instructions at somewhere around a year, I did make some cursory apologies. I'm not drinking now. I'm really trying to change my life. I know. I was a jerk, and I'm sorry about that. And I just want, I'm trying to do better. Yeah. Like a cursory half apology. I didn't know any better. I mean, my sponsor was proud that I could do that much.
Yeah.
but when I got to Joe and Charlie, and then 10 minutes after getting the Joe and Charlie workshop, I got the Joe Hawk Salvation Army talks, and that showed me that there's deeper levels to this, and there really is a right way to do it, and if you follow to the best of your ability the instructions in the book, that's the right way. Now there's a lot of latitude and there's a lot of variables involved in all that, but if there's a specific instruction in the book Alcoholics Anonymous about what to do and what not to do, we should follow that. And so my second list of amends was big book based, and I followed basically Joe Hawk's format that he laid out in the Salvation Army talks. This was maybe 1992, my second run through the amends, and it was more thorough and it was more appropriate and it got a better response. It just seemed to be more legitimate to the people that were hearing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I started to believe very, very much in the instructions, because I got a generous response from the instructions.
Yeah, and one of the particular ones that stands out for me was I went to an old home group member from my first home group, and I'd caused a lot of harms there. I'd gotten resentful and just did some damage at that group. And but I went to this individual particularly and was just sharing, they were making amends. There was a handful of things that, my sponsors like, just want to make it real short and sweet, real short and sweet. You don't want to turn the whole thing into about you, But what came about that was I walked away from it. I've given that individual the opportunity to talk and share their feelings and all that with me, and I walked away from it understanding a whole level of stuff that I just didn't realize, a lot of harms that I was causing at the time. Oh
yeah, sometimes you find out they're not really mad at you for the thing you think.
Yeah.
There's something deeper.
Yeah. Yeah.
So next week, I'll explain the process that I've kind of started to use based on the big book with a couple of things thrown in that seem to work really well for me. And we'll go over some examples next week too of where the unexpected happens. The unexpected almost always happens, and I have been thrown out of the office on occasion. But even the time I was thrown out of the office twice, I ended up being able to make the amends. And we ended up on really, really good terms. This was a boss of mine, from way back when, and we ended up doing work together. We ended up, involved in business together.
Nice.
And so the unexpected almost always happens. I think if we're, if we're honest and we're sincere about our desire to set right a wrong, that is communicated in every way to the person that we're making an approach to, and unless something really crazy is going on, you get a good response. That's been my experience. Out of let's say I've done 100 amends in the different lists that I did. Let's say I did about 100 amends. Every single one of them worked out better than I could have expected.
Wow.
And yet, my self-consciousness would say, I know the last 92 amends went really well, but the 93rd is going to go bad. I know, and every single time I made one of those amends, became willing to make one of those amends, that much of the toxic self-consciousness shrank within me, and the spiritual consciousness took its place. So that's really what this whole thing is about: the consciousness of the presence of God, the fourth dimension of reality. We're now in the realm of the spirit. That's what this whole thing is about. And Paul, the realm of the spirit is not some wacky selling flowers at the airport. The realm of the spirit is being right here, right now, and seeing things as they really are, but being on a different plane. Making decisions from a different viewpoint, a different perspective. That's what this awakening is all about.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So what's your experience with over the years of working with guys and also the ones you've done? Is there a particular setup that you like as far as which ones to start with, like the easier ones or the ones that are probably, closer to you? What's your experience with that? I mean, obviously,
the best way for me to describe my approach is you will intuitively know how to handle sponsees and their amends better than you would have prior to going through the steps.
Gotcha.
So what really is intuition? Intuition is to know without conscious thought, to trust, to leave room for God. And a lot of times, Paul, in my conversations with somebody else, I'm asking myself, who the heck is doing the talking? I'm saying some really good things. Where's that coming from? And I think that's because you get in tune with the realm of the spirit.
Nice.
And sometimes I'll ask them to start on the hard ones. Sometimes I'll ask them to knock out the really easy ones, because that might build up some momentum.
Yeah.
I worked with one guy who had 90 some amends, and as he kept making those amends, he kept wanting to make more, because it was a really good experience every time. So he's like, yeah, more.
Yeah.
And you don't want them to stall out. You want them to keep momentum. And you want to keep them enthusiastic about this stuff.
Right. So
time is of the essence. We live in a crazy world today. If you're a new guy and I'm working with you, I got maybe Tuesday night between 6 and 8. It's just a crazy world.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of afraid to work with new people that need to keep up a massive amount of momentum and enthusiasm. Because sometimes they need a lot of work and a lot of time The way my life is today, I don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is, rather than take them on myself, I'll pass them off to one of my sponsees who's, in a period of unemployment or something. You know what I mean?
Heck yeah.
Like because momentum and enthusiasm are two things that really, really need to happen. And there's a window of opportunity also. You can lose your window of opportunity. If you let a guy wait 2 or 3 years before pushing him to amends, you might have lost the window of opportunity. They might not be at a place now where there's any desperation left in their life to take drastic action. So you want to catch the window of opportunity as well.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. I really like that. Yeah, that enthusiasm's huge, right? And
most important thing we can have.
Yeah, it's interesting. It brings me to when we were talking about going to the conferences and stuff, and it's just there's a pocket of enthusiasm out there. You tap into it and just ride it through, right? You become a part of it.
Yeah, you get caught up in it, and it's contagious, and we need that. That's one of the main points in the fellowship. We need to stay around people with common problem, common solution, because it keeps us focused. It's really in this kind of world, Paul. It's so easy to get out of focus. There's a new Netflix show. Yeah. Harry wants me to help him move. My wife wants to go on vacation. They're asking for help down at the church bazaar. I mean, there's 1,000 good things, right? Yeah. But the good can sometimes be the enemy of the best.
Amen. Yeah.
And we can get caught up in the good, and we can pay the price for it. Mm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That's good stuff, man. Absolutely. That's cool, man. All right, so let's see. I really enjoy just the different takes on a lot of this stuff. You hear so many different people talk about it in different ways, and I really like that. It's just about your consciousness, right? Trying to free up your conscience and get.
Yeah.
Would you say the reluctance that we're defending?
The reluctance that we're defending is our illness.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. Never looked at it like that, but it makes all the sense in the world now that you say it.
The thing we're trying to recover from is what's telling us not to recover.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. Yeah, that's great stuff, man. So, tell me what you got going on this upcoming. You got any big plans this upcoming weekend? You speaking anywhere?
Yeah, I've got a number of things coming up. Something in York, something in Delaware. Coming up really soon, a spiritual breakfast. I try to stay busy. I've got a good friend here in town, Steve, who's road dog with me to a lot of these things. Thank God for that.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're out there and you're starting to get involved and starting to spread your wings a little bit in different areas, get yourself a road dog.
Nice.
That's somebody who will say yes when you say, "Hey, you want to go to the spiritual breakfast 160 miles from here on Thursday?"
Yeah.
We need road dogs. Yeah. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be, and I don't like driving, at night for long distances. So my buddy Steve has been really great about helping out with that.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. Cool. Yeah, I got me and my sponsor. That's he had just moved into town a couple years back, and from all the way from Maryland, and we're hours and hours away from Maryland, and he we just kind of met up and just hit it off, man. And I showed him what little bit of AA we were doing at the time in Lebanon, and a lot of things have just changed since then, man. It's been cool. Now we go to at least two men's retreats a year together. We just we travel. We went to Atlanta. He spoke in Atlanta a few months back in August down there. Have you ever been to the Fifth Tradition Group? You've ever been down there?
Where?
In Atlanta.
Maybe. I mean, I've done a number of things in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I think there's a group there that does something every quarter. It's like a one-day workshop.
Yeah.
I've done things there, but Atlanta's a big town.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. How about, do you have any workshops coming up?
Oh, geez.
Probably.
So So they're trying to get me out to LA to do like a weekend. I'm kind of reluctant these days to be the only guy starting Friday night and ending Sunday afternoon, and doing all the talking for a whole weekend. It pulls the soul out of me to do like 16 hours worth of talking.
Wow.
So that's kind of on the back burner.
Yeah.
We'll just I'm open. I am not one of those speakers who's booked 3 years out. I'm not one of the performance speakers who goes on all the cruise ships and everything. That's really not my thing. So a lot of times if someone asks me, I might, that weekend might be open.
Yeah. Nice, man. Cool. Well, cool, Chris. I really appreciate you. This has been awesome, man. I've learned so much, and like I've said, we've had a lot of good feedback from just different people that really enjoyed this. It answers a lot of questions that a lot of people had. At the end of the day, especially when someone's first getting into sponsorship, they only have whatever experience they have, right? And stuff like this really kind of answers a lot of questions that sometimes they don't even realize.
So if you're reluctant to work with other people because you feel insufficient, I'll just say this: you're going to kill the first 3 people you work with anyway. Yeah. So get going.
Yeah.
Get going. And I'm only kidding.
Yeah. It's funny. I heard it. It's true. One of the common themes that's happened or keeps showing up over the last few months. It's not even about being the most qualified. It's really just about being available, right? And let God do the rest.
Always leave room for God. Always leave room for God.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. So we have, for all the listeners, on our next, we're going to do step 9, which is coming up this upcoming Tuesday, a week from today, February 25th. And just for those that are listening that aren't aware, what we do is we record these live. We don't stream them live, but we record these live, and then I post them on the website shortly after. So it's been fun, Chris. Appreciate you, buddy.
Oh, yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm looking forward to next week. Next week, that'll be the time for telling some really cool immense stories.
Nice. I'm super excited about it. Those are always my favorite. And my sponsors, he always has a whole handful of great ones to share. It's cool. I don't really have like a lot of special men's stories, to be honest with you. I'm looking forward to maybe some of that happening, but yeah. All right, buddy. Well, appreciate you, man. And I will talk to you next week.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, buddy. See you.
Hello. Thank you for listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.